I thought we'd break down one of the most important reader questions. How do I find the right golf ball for my game? Hello, everybody. This is episode number 91 of No Putts Given. I'm Miranda. I've got Tony, Harry, and Chris here with me today, and this is the episode that you've been waiting for. We have ball test data, and we're going to break it down for you.
Balls.
Do you remember the ball test, Tony? Did we do, or did you just black out for like a week?
It is. I mean, it's such a blur at this point between doing it and then just, feeding in the data and trying to draw meaningful insights from it for everybody. Yeah, it's an adventure. Glad it's over with. Would love to never do it again. But
Can't wait for the next one.
Feeling that's not going to be acceptable to anybody.
I think you got about 2 years of a break, Tony.
It's not even. It'll be a year and a half, probably.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, and by then you'll be excited about it again. We did get a lot of comments about how mammoth an effort it must have been to collect all of this data and, like you said, make it meaningful for everybody. Why don't you give people an idea of how long and how many hours that you put in behind the scenes crunching data to make this happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, right? There's the stuff that everybody sees, or everybody who sees it sees, which I guess is sort of the report, what we wrote up itself. And then there's the test itself, which we live stream. So some people see that, but there's a lot of planning that goes into it, talking to people, trying to figure out, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is the volume of golf balls we have to test, because that's always a challenge for us. If you're Callaway, Titleist, pick a ball company, Bridgestone, when they do testing, on any given sort of test for them, they're looking at 2, 3, maybe 4 golf balls. We're looking at 37. So
We're sorry we didn't capture every golf ball on the market that is like a 1-piece to a 5-piece golf ball.
Oh my God.
Yeah, why don't you give the lowdown on why only urethane balls?
We would still bloody be there.
But come on, one thing at a time here, Miranda. Give me a minute.
Sorry, I was going to say, everyone was asking why no urethane
we'll
balls.
get there. So in terms of what goes into it, right? There's the planning. There's the sort of planning for the data and the data management tools, which, we built based on the previous test data to have that ready as much as we possibly could. And then, solidly 2 weeks trying to crunch what we had. So, end to end, literally 4 weeks of time going into it. And that's, with the whole team, not accounting for all the guys out there. So to Miranda's question, why urethane? Well, ultimately, this is a performance golf ball test, right? We want to find the highest performing golf balls. And look, I understand some of you have 2-piece ionomer balls that you love. Some of you even have shit 2-piece matte covered balls that you love. And while I can appreciate that, at the end of the day, the highest performance golf balls all have urethane covers. This is kind of an undisputed fact across the industry. And so, once you decide that you're not going to play a urethane cover, that's not a performance decision. That's ultimately usually a cost decision. Sometimes it's a color decision. There are different reasons why, but in terms of just pure performance, that's really what we wanted to look at. When you talk pure performance golf balls, you're looking at urethane covers.
But so 37 urethane balls were tested.
36 and a range ball.
Yeah, but that's
Fair
37.
enough.
Yeah.
We got some interesting information, and that'll come out in lab form later. We hinted to it a little bit in the write-up, but all of that testing data will come out later in a specific lab. But I think a lot of the feedback that we were getting was, why not name a top 5 or the number 1 ball in golf? Why didn't we do that?
At least my goal with this was to focus on the performance attributes. I think we do a really good job in Ball Lab quantifying quality and consistency. And certainly we saw some things in the performance test that translated from what we saw in Ball Lab in terms of, things just being a little squirrely, if you will, in some cases. But
there it is.
I love that word.
Had to get it in there.
In terms of why we didn't name a best ball this time, I have some opinions on what I think are the best ball for the middle of the bell curve, but fundamentally my thinking on this is that from a performance perspective, there's really no such thing as a bad ball or the best ball, right? There is no, contrary to Callaway's marketing, a golf ball that is better for everyone. That is objectively bullshit. And so I didn't want to participate in something that is objectively bullshit and say, this is the best ball for everyone. Again, I think there are some balls that are better, some that are worse.
I would also say there are balls out there that only maybe 1% of the golfing public should play.
But I think that's the point.
That's what I was getting at. So you have like these. I think a great example is the Kirkland, right? That is a ball I would not play. And the reason I would not play it is that it spins so much more than just about any other ball in the test.
But if you're a guy who hits it low, if you hit low and low spin, that might be a ball that you should consider.
There is a guy in the Mizuno RB Tour Series, another one where they tend to fly a little lower, kind of peak higher, and again spin a lot. Not a ball that's for everyone.
All right, but what about this ball? Inesis 900.
Yeah, I mean that one we did see some squirrely stuff, but again, like if you want to talk just in terms of the performance characteristics, higher spin, so kind of where they're Kirkland, and like the Kirkland, it is a value proposition. So if you say, hey, all right, I'm going to listen, I'm going to play a urethane ball, I want something that's actually going to spin, which the majority of two-piece balls don't, then that's a lower priced option. And so that's kind of the mindset. Hey, what are the performance characteristics of this golf ball? And then, go from there.
I mean, part of the reality, like, again, it was kind of fun for me to watch the entire process from afar, kind of just, I don't know that I watched the entire live stream.
You did not watch almost 60 hours.
Chris, to be fair, I didn't either.
and therefore I'm deeply troubled by some of the results because I can't trust. I mean, it's not like you had a camera on you all the time. But, like, to me, it goes back to there's always trade-offs, right? In engineering this stuff, there's always trade-offs. And because of that, it's not unlike certain equipment, right? Where we say, okay, there isn't a driver that is the best driver for every golfer out there, but there is one that's probably best for you. So every ball does something, but no ball does everything for every player. And in my mind, that's the objective bullshitometer, approach of like, okay, there's going to be a cost benefit here, regardless of what ball. And like you said, that's why it's hard to say, hey, there's a best ball for performance, because what Tony needs is going to be different than what Harry needs, because we know Harry struggles with greenside spin. He can't get the ball to check around the green because he's, an exceptional golfer. Yeah, right, whatever. But, Tony, who creates a tremendous amount of spin on a lot of different shots, could spin a rock fight.
All of the shots.
Right? And so it's like, you just look at that and you say, there's no way that the ball that's best for Tony is also going to be a ball that's great for Harry. And you see that played out actually on the highest levels of golf too, right? And people have different preferences for how to play different shots. Some guys don't want to play high spin shots around the green. They want to do it a little bit differently. And so this idea that there's one ball that's better for all, or a ball that's best on every shot or whatever, is like...
I mean, if that was true, then every Callaway player would be playing the same bloody ball, and it wouldn't matter that you're changing it.
Yeah, if that were true, there'd be one sandwich shop in the world. It'd be Jersey Mike's. Nobody else would exist.
It would be, tastier for everyone.
All right, let's break it down.
Moving
on.
The way that we organized the findings here is we separated some themes, right? So there were some certain things that you found, and one of those is what we found in 2019, soft is slow, but we added an asterisk this year. Soft is slow, but...
That's a nice thing about doing this, getting your reps in, right? You're able to sort of find things faster, understand what to look for. And so last time soft is slow was kind of the breakthrough revelation, even though kind of, a lot of golfers didn't know it. The industry knew it, kept it quiet. But this time it was like, yes, soft is still slow, but, and then a series of findings trickling from that. And kind of the big one, first one up, is soft doesn't spin. And so, invariably, we find that the softest golf balls spin less. And the reason it's not necessarily that there's a direct correlation. It's just all the things that you have to do to make a ball feel soft, which, primarily make a soft core, require those outer layers to be a bit firmer than they would be if you're dealing with a firmer core golf ball. And so, spin comes from putting a soft layer over a hard one. And so if you're putting a progressively harder layer over a softer core, that's hard over soft, not going to spin as much.
Is that across the board from driver irons and then 50
Yeah.
yards and then chip
Oh,
shots. So
yeah,
pretty much
and that's the other thing.
everything
Like you get a little bit of this in the table, but for the most part, a ball
It's pretty
that is
correlated.
high spin off a driver is going to be high spin off even a 55-yard wedge, which was kind of eye opening. But yeah, so these low compression balls, the examples I would give: TaylorMade Tour Response, Duo Professional, Bridgestone RX, RXS, Callaway Chrome Soft, all of these things that are, 75-ish, sub 80 compression, if you want to speak in really broad terms, spin appreciably less than kind of your Pro V1s of the world, your Tour Bs, especially as you get into the higher compression balls.
Now, you mentioned that if it spins off a driver, it spins off the wedge. We tested all of these balls with 3 clubs, a driver, an 8-iron, and a wedge. Why do you think the driver and the wedge were seeing similar results?
So it's fundamentally that, if you go back to some of the marketing, right, at lower swing speeds, you don't compress the core with the driver. Again, good story, not exactly true. That's why we see ball speeds, the balls that are fast. And again, this is just the ball speed number, to be clear. The balls that generate the highest ball speed at 115 miles an hour driver swing also generate the highest ball speeds at 85. So there's your compression correlation. And so you just follow those same lines. The speed holds up and those spin profiles hold up as well, because even on, say, an 8-iron shot at relatively low speed, you're still, not as much, but you're getting, I wouldn't say necessarily into the core, but you are still getting to a point where you get the interaction of those layers. Mm-hmm. And so the spin properties definitely translate. So again, higher spinning at 115 mile an hour, whether it's the iron equivalent or the driver, is going to be typically higher spinning at, slower drivers than 8-irons. It's just, and again, you do see some movement in the table, but if you look, again, using that Kirkland as the example, right near at or near the top every step of the way. On the other side of the, table, Bridgestone, RXS, the TaylorMade Tour Response, really low spinning across the board. And these kind of things hold true in basically every scenario we tested, right, is the key, I would say.
Well, and it's kind of like there's buckets, right? Like in my mind, when I was thinking about it, it's like you said, it's going to kind of trace throughout, regardless of what ball companies will tell you. Oh, this is, lower spin off the driver, but then it has, all the tour preferred, characteristics around the green. It's like, you have to understand it's relative to that category. Right. So it's like if you take a ball that's
relative to that category, and very typically relative to the other balls in that same manufacturer's lineup.
Exactly. And so like if you have a ball, so just take an example of one ball that's higher spin off the driver. Right. And then you say, oh, but it's lower spin off the irons. Well, it may be lower spin relative to how high of a spinning ball it was off the driver. Like maybe it went down one little notch, or relative to something else in its lineup. But it's like, again, it has to be relative to that. Like, hey, I didn't eat as much ice cream last night as I typically do.
Here we go.
Which is still 4 to 5 times the amount that probably the FDA or whoever recommends for any normal human.
Is there an FDA recommended amount of ice cream?
Whatever it is, I exceed it on the daily. It's like so it's relative. So you're not going to get a ball right now that's, oh, this is crazy low spin off the driver, but unbelievably high spin, around the greens. It's going to be, that'd be like the bullshit ball of 2021 or something. The Tony Covey bullshit ball. That'd be great.
There we go. Tony, another one of your key findings was forget about launch angle, trajectory is the thing. Can you explain the difference?
Yeah, this one was kind of fascinating to me. So, and it started when I pulled up the kind of the raw, unfiltered, untweaked data at the high swing speed driver. And I'm like, all right, let's look at launch angle. And I'm like, sort of squinting, almost like pulling my face right up to the screen. And
it's all within 1 degree, maybe not.
Yeah. So I think even kind of after we threw out some of the really abnormal stuff, we ended up like 0.7 to 0.9 degrees difference of launch. And even irons, it was relatively minimal. If you want to define 2 standard deviations as your threshold, they're all the same. And I think, golf, we tend to have to be less strict on that to find meaning, but launch angle is very similar. But then we start looking at other characteristics of trajectory. So for me, that is, peak height. How high did the ball fly? The peak height distance, meaning how far down range did it reach that height, and then ultimately the descent angle. So how did it fall out of the sky? And so, we see balls that tend to get up in the air very quickly, have sort of what I would call near or something along those lines, peak trajectories, and then kind of come relatively straight down. Kind
so
of
Tony, what balls would you say? All right, give me 3 balls. One that basically launched at everyone the same.
They all launch the same.
Well, yeah. So launch the same. So get a good trajectory and then kept going. Like instead of just falling out of the sky, it just pretty much kept going. Like an AVX.
I mean, there's a few standouts. So, Chrome Soft, I think, is a good example of a ball. Like if you really need to kind of get the ball up and then have it come pretty straight down. My recollection, and again, when we look more closely at trajectory, we can confirm that. Chrome Soft is kind of that get up and kind of overcome the lower spin through a steeper descent angle. So that's one you look at and go, yeah, that's not for me, but that's a scenario that could work for the right demographic of golfers. My preferred golf balls, we mentioned a time or two, the Pro V1X Left Dash, that one was notable as kind of the one that really kind of peaks farther down range, what we saw. So kind of more of a penetrating trajectory, right? Kind of just a slow climb and then kind of just that gradual descent. So
now, is there any correlation between like trajectory? I can't even speak today.
Trajectory.
That's 4 syllables.
There it is.
4 syllables.
There you go. Yay. So that, and then descent angle, and then the correlated distance. So obviously, ones that's going to have a steeper descent angle could potentially be shorter. Is that true or false?
It could potentially be longer. And that's kind of, this is why I kind of, there's a golfer mindset, right? Like if I give you a set of numbers, if I put up the table and say, hey, find the best driver, the best golf ball, whatever it's going to be, like you're gonna scroll until you hit that distance column. 9 golfers out of 10 probably, that's going to be the first place they start. And what I would say is we had to publish distance numbers because golfers want to see that. We know that. We can't sort of hide it because then, we already get accused of hiding stuff if we just say, hey, we're not going to publish distance numbers because, well, the fact of the matter is that those carry numbers really depend totally on how the golf swing interacts with both the launch and spin properties, but also the aerodynamics of the golf ball. So
bingo.
If let's say, you and I were to swing the same speed for once, right? I just have this magical day where I'm swinging 128 mile hour driver, 128 with you. But our sort of dynamics of, how much loft we put on the driver, all of these things that we know vary from golfer to golfer are different. We might produce similar ball speed numbers, but because of our differences in launch and spin, right? It's all
dynamic loft, launch, everything.
Right. It's all part of the distance equation. And so, my longest ball, even at say 128 mile an hour driver swing speed, very likely may not be your longest ball. And so that's kind of the things you can't really account for. And I would also add too, that is something to think about just in very general terms. When you look at any manufacturer who makes a claim, that says, hey, our ball is better than this competitor's ball, take a look. Like, okay, I'll call somebody out directly here. So I was looking at Vice, for example. If you look at the Vice Pro and the new Vice Pro Zero that's coming out, right, they both are better than a Pro V1, according to Vice, right? You look at the Vice website, they have their independent testing independent testing they paid for that shows that their ball is better than the Pro V1. And then you look closely, it's like, well, we tested one of these balls at like 108 miles an hour, something like that, and the other one at like 100 miles an hour, even though they're roughly in the same compression range. And hey, maybe that's an accident, maybe that's oversight, maybe that's, any number of things, but also maybe they understand that these are conditions that create the most favorable result.
Optimal for that difference, right?
And again, it's not just Vice. You'll see it 100 places if you look closely. So that's just the kind of thing to keep in mind, like the conditions of the setup matter, and that's why we sort of tried to, as best we could, say, hey, this is as close to an optimal situation as we can get based on standard launch and spin tables.
But here's a question too: or I guess a statement is, it seems like the shift that you noticed in that is forever we've been looking at ball performance in these things, like standing behind somebody hitting the ball and watching it go down range, launch, spin, etc. And basically what we've done is kept that perspective, but then shifted somebody like perpendicular. And now we're watching it go, launch down range, peak height, descent angle, and final. So it's like, we went from, this perspective to looking at it from this side as well. And that tells an entirely different story.
It is really interesting when you kind of look at that and see, for example, situations where, hey, both of these balls averaged almost exactly the same carry. And then you go, again, make that perpendicular rotation and look at it from the side and go, wow, but they got there two entirely different ways. And so depending on how the golfer delivers the club, one of those is definitely going to be better than the other. And so that's a case where, looking through the data and go, hey, all right, I think I need more spin, I need less spin. That's kind of where those differences are going to shine, is understanding where you are with your golf ball and then saying, hey, okay, I know what I have. Now I want to get, either maybe I need a more spin or less spin, or I want a little bit more speed, a little less speed, or maybe I want it to fly higher or lower, whatever it is. That's what I'm hoping you can extrapolate from our data in general.
What I'm hearing right now is robot testing is the way to go for golf balls because it's consistent variable hitting an exactly the same point every single time. But then when you take it into a golfer's hands and put it into a golfer's hands,
yeah, we're providing a relative baseline, right? Every golfer's different.
Yeah, it's like a good umbrella to start off with, and then you can go from there. It's all a recommendation is what we're doing.
A flies higher than B. We can say that confidently because we used a robot. But again, that the relationship with those two balls is still going to stay the same. It's that what happens at the end of it is different. But that's ultimately our objective, is to say, hey, you know what you want, where you are. You know kind of what your golf ball does. If you need it to do a little more of this and a little less of that, that's, where I think the data really can be helpful. And within that, we do make some general recommendations.
You bring me to my next point.
All right. Yeah.
So the last of your key findings was that golf ball models are significantly different, which I think is why we're able to make specific recommendations, right? So we broke this down by swing speed and club, and it can get fairly intricate in terms of the way this was laid out. So if we can generalize and kind of help people read through this, Tony, high swing speed driver, you make specific recommendations for. We give you the robot averages and everything. So for your high swing speed results, for low spin, you made 3 recommendations: the Snell MTBX, Titleist Pro V1X Left Dash, and the Vice Pro Plus. Why those?
So, I will start, and there would be some people who aren't going to want to hear this, but I'm going to be absolutely blunt about it. There is almost no scenario, and certainly no broad general scenario like we're trying to cover here, that I wouldn't recommend a Titleist golf ball. And again, there are niche players where if you said, but this, but that, I certainly would have you go in another direction. But if you say, hey, give me 3 to try, a Titleist is always going to be one,
in that,
because we see it in Ball Lab, how consistent it is. We see it, Harry will talk, what we saw during the robot test.
It was ridiculous. We actually went out on Ballsy Limb during a live feed.
Ballsy Limb?
Yeah. A Ballsy Limb.
You like Ballsy Limbs?
That sounds like a great golf course name.
We basically said, just watch this, and we basically said, this is going to be the spin, this is going to be the trajectory, this is going to be this, that, and the other of the Pro V1X, I think it was at the time, and it did exactly what we said. Exactly.
Because it did it the entire test. So
yeah.
But anyway, so the left dash, and again, low spin being relative, right? And so I think...
So is this if you're a low spin golfer or you want low spin?
So if you need to bring spin down.
Good question.
Gotcha.
And so, and keep in mind here, one of the things it was, as I mentioned earlier, we tried to hit optimal windows for each of our different scenarios. With the high swing speed driver test in particular, we got higher spin than I would have liked. And, you sort of don't realize it until you're deep in, like, hey, this isn't going to come down. And so we decided not to start over. And one of the benefits of that is we did see those scenarios where, if you're a golfer, high speed golfer who spins 2,800 plus with a driver, a low spin golf ball can work for you because you're offsetting that speed penalty with super low spin. But when I made these recommendations, I tried not to think of the extremes. All right, that's kind of once you're at the extremes, that's kind of a whole different thing. So, whether it's my spin recommendation or, the spin recommendations were sort of like low spin, but not super low spin. You need higher spin, but not absurd spin. That was kind of the mindset there. So certainly left dash. The Snell, it was a little different performance than we saw last time, but I still think that's one that really kind of walks that kind of, low-ish spin threshold at times. And that's one where we do see a little bit more movement in the table. So again, just a ball we liked from the first time we saw it. And while definitely not as fast this time for some reason, we still like the overall performance. And then, Vice Pro. And for the most part, I would say, most of the Vice balls were unremarkable, not good, not bad, just, nothing really stood out. But the Vice Pro, again, for this kind of higher speed, lower spin, or guy who needs lower spin, that's another one we kind of looked at it, and that's a really solid performance. So we like that one quite a bit as well.
And doesn't it make sense though, based on its, like, again, we talk about third party manufacturers, factories, overseas stuff where, you're effectively ordering off a menu. Wouldn't you expect to see performance that's somewhat similar to other balls that are ordered off the same menu, more or less?
Yeah, we'll see. There certainly there'll be some talking points later.
So if you're looking for higher spin, Tony, you're in the high swing speed group. You've got Callaway Chrome Soft X, Titleist Pro V1X, and Wilson's Staff model. Why those?
So Chrome Soft X is, and this one I will say in my mind is sort of right at that threshold of, man, for some guys it's going to be too much spin, but it is just kind of that, for that player in particular, we saw it, based on our settings. Again, it was long. Certainly the higher spin width in general.
I have a question.
Yeah.
It's titled Chrome Soft. Is it soft? What's its compression? Because weren't we saying soft doesn't spin?
Yeah, so it's soft in name only for sure. Yeah,
okay.
Chrome Soft is relatively soft. Chrome Soft X and XLS are definitely not soft, but again, that's one where we see it. I would put it at the higher end of what I consider to be the beneficial spin range. So that for that player, I kind of like that ball quite a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, so Pro V1X, look, it's arguably the most consistent, best performing ball in the test. And again, that's broad strokes. I'm not saying it's better for everyone. I'm just saying, like, we were really impressed with what we saw. So look, the Pro V1X is what it is. Like, I don't have to tell you that's a good ball. Jesus. But I will say the Wilson, consistently a surprise, and I don't mean just in performance. Like, we knew that was going to be, again, like the Chrome Soft X, it is kind of on the higher end of the spin range, but how it performed in the test was just constantly there, especially when we looked at ball speed. Just no real declines, no shortcomings, and kind of linking that to the quality perspective, what we find in ball lab, just a really consistent, excellent ball. And so, that's a case where I'm like, yeah, this is one, if you're that player, don't rule out the Wilson. It's a really solid golf ball. Probably, I don't want to say surprisingly impressive, because again, we'd already seen the results in ball lab that suggest that, hey, yeah, this is a really solid ball. But if you are looking for more spin, particularly if you're a high speed player, that's one to look at. I would say probably avoid the raw version, just because once it gets a little wet, like a matte ball, you are going to see degradation in spin performance. So there you go.
Yeah, if it gets wet, it's going to get weird.
Wet is weird.
Wet is weird.
You also have a balanced performance category, Tony, with the Snell MTB Black, TaylorMade TP5X, and Titleist Pro V1. What does balanced performance mean? You're just looking to keep things consistent?
Yeah, this is sort of like, hey, I'm the middle of the bell curve player. Like, I don't hit it too high, I don't spin it too much or too little, I'm not hitting low bullets, sort of like, sort of the, as I like to say, the meat of the market golfer, right? The sort of like this giant sphere that encompasses average performance characteristics. So again, like Pro V1 is a Pro V1, just a tremendous golf ball. I'd like it a little firmer. That's me, but and you'll find too, these balls are all right around 90 compression, which is kind of where a lot of companies try and go with this for their mass market golf ball. So that's the Titleist. The TaylorMade, the TP5X to me is really interesting in that I've mentioned before, softened it up quite a bit more from the previous generation, and now it's much closer, based on everything I've seen, what I've measured, what we see in testing, much closer in performance to a Pro V1 now than a Pro V1X or a firmer golf ball. And that's a ball that I just, I like what I saw during the test. Ball lab, it's done reasonably well, little squirrel here and there, but nothing like, oh my God, trash the whole box kind of thing. And it's a ball I've played a little bit, and I kind of, again, I'd like the spin to be a little bit lower for me, but it's one I like, and I think may scare off guys just because it has an X on it, but I think between the two TaylorMade balls, it's probably the better fit for more golfers. Oh, the Snell MTB Black. Yeah. Again, just solid kind of middle of the table performance.
Okay. So then if you want to take a look at some more specific data for drivers, irons, and wedges in the high swing speed category, we break down total distance, we break down spin. There's all kinds of charts and graphs you can take a look at there. But moving on to recommendations for mid swing speed golfers. And Tony, what do we have mid swing speed at? What? 100.
So 100. Yeah, that's we think, this is a good spot based on our surveys. We know that the typical MyGolfSpy reader is somewhere between 95 and 105 average swing speed. At least that's what they tell us. And so, hey, that seems like 100 is a pretty good number.
It could be a lie.
So it's more like 90 to 92 then probably in reality.
They also hit at 350.
So for low spin for our mid swing speed golfers, Tony, we've got recommendations for the Bridgestone Tour BX, the Srixon Z-Star XV, and Titleist Pro V1 X left dash. There's a lot of letters and numbers.
It's a lot of numbers.
Yeah, again, I'm just like, if you're trying to cut spin at all, like, and you want a real kind of tour-like ball, like left dash is always going to be on that list. Sorry, not sorry. The what were the others?
Bridgestone Tour BX and Srixon Z-Star XV.
Yeah, I love that Tour BX again in that kind of just a tick lower spin category. I played it quite a bit over the years. Still play it from time to time this year when I'm just kind of trying to look at differences. And I think again for somebody who's trying to take a little bit of spin out of the game, just a tremendous option. Srixon, yeah, this is again the Srixon. This is their higher compression. I think we have this at 96, and this is one where, it didn't pop a lot through the test, but for whatever reason, under the conditions we tested, it was just right there. And I'm like, yeah, for that guy. And it's interesting because it's traditionally been a higher spinning ball. And here, just looking at the numbers, it was like, yeah, this under these conditions, this works really well. So that's another one I like for sure.
Okay, if you're in the mid-swing speed group and you're looking for more spin, we've got recommendations for TaylorMade TP5, Titleist Pro V1X, and again, the Wilson Staff model.
Yeah, and so the one we haven't talked about here is the TaylorMade TP5. And like the X, I think this kind of caught us a little bit by surprise. We knew, again, that the compression was quite a bit softer than the previous generation, and it was higher spin than I was expecting. I thought it was probably going to be more mid-tail, but it really cheated to the top, and again among the true tour balls, not the ones, when I say true tour ball, I mean that has a compression rating and spin properties that you would actually see in play on tour. Like it's kind of again at the Chrome Soft X, pushing the limits of what I might recommend for a guy looking for just a bit more spin, but yeah, just one, again, some squirrel on a couple shots in it. So, certainly not my highest confidence golf ball, but in terms of just pure performance, this is one where like, hey, I need a little more spin in my game. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, and we talked about the Titleist Pro V1X and the Wilson Staff model. So for balanced performance, we're seeing the Bridgestone Tour BX pop back up, the Snell MTB Black, and the Titleist Pro V1.
Yeah, those, they just kept coming up as we go. Hey, does this tick all of the boxes for those middle of the bell curve golfers? And I like those balls. And I would throw in too, because we got asked about it somewhere. Like somebody asked about the Bridgestone B and the BX, and it's interesting. Like both of those, the XS in particular kind of floats like between almost a higher spin ball, just right on the edge of what I would consider the average spin range. So that's one that I tell people is like, if there's not a Bridgestone on this list, it's probably the next one up depending on the category every time.
Well, and I saw that too. Question, like the longest ball in mid swing speed for driver, right? Longest ball was MaxFly, right? CG, I believe. And MaxFly Tour, not the Tour X. I'm going back to previous ball lab, was like the number 3-ish ball in terms of consistent production over time. And so when I was looking through, they're like, hey, if I'm looking for something that's long and I'm in that mid swing speed range, again, I think there's a lot of good balls in this category, but that one kind of popped out to me a little bit because, like you said, people are going to scroll through and say, okay, well, what's the longest ball? And we saw that with Snell last time around, 1.5 years ago. I think seeing something a little bit similar with MaxFly this time around.
I mean, though the Max Flies tested really well in our first ball test as well. And we found some things in Ball Lab, which we've talked about with Max Fly, with the X. It's just, there were some issues with one of the boxes, but even that's generally pretty solid. And, we talk about those more, there's a quick section we dropped in about direct to consumer and value recommendations. And again, I feel like the Max Flies almost get overlooked, and we tend to do it too. Golfers, when we say, hey, direct to consumer brands, it's Snell and Vice are obviously the first two that come to mind. And, we talk about Encore a little bit here and there, and we showed, do I have the Vero box, the Wayne Player Master Special?
Do the hand thing again. It might be
it's
there.
over. It's actually, the box is still over there, but we talk about those, and sometimes we overlook Max Fly, and that's one where what are they, $35 a dozen, and sometimes they do BOGOs and things like that.
I feel like it's like shopping at one of those Kohl's stores or whatever. It's like that's what it is, but it's always less than that. Like there's always a coupon, and
it's
whatever.
Yeah, and it's it's just, again, if you want a solid tour quality, tour spec, if you will, golf ball, it's legitimately tough to beat, as I put it right there with the Snells and for the money anyway.
Yep.
Okay, and again, if you want to look at the longest, or did we didn't put the shortest in there, did we, Tony?
No, I don't think anybody is going, hey, you know what, I hit the ball too far, and so could you tell me what's going to be the shortest golf ball for my game?
I didn't know if we put it in there in terms of what to avoid.
How do I roll back the ball without rolling back the ball?
Chris, I've been struggling at McGregor. I've been flying the fourth green consistently, so maybe I should seek out a ball that's just a little shorter.
Or maybe you should just club down.
No. Over number 4 is a great place to be. That's ideal.
Over 4 is death. Anyway.
But like I said, if you want to take a look at the longest, the highest spinning, lowest spinning, and those sort of things, you can take a scroll through. Lots of charts and graphs to guide you through that. So on to slow swing speed recommendations. For low spin, we've got Bridgestone, Tour, BRX, the TaylorMade Tour Response, and Titleist AVX. Can you walk me through these, Tony?
This is kind of a mix, and the AVX is a little bit weird, as it tends to be lower flying than the others. Again, some people need that, and not as weird as the first generation, I would say. Again, I just, in low compression in general, without excessively low spin, I really like the RX for a slower swing speed guy who wants soft feel. Like, if I can concede that, all right. If I can bring myself to let go and concede, okay, that's what some guys are going to buy. I love the RX in that spot as well.
Okay.
So, and the Tour Response trends lower spin, but when you kind of look at the distance in some scenarios, it's kind of hard to ignore that one.
Okay, and if you're a slow swing speed golfer and you're looking for more spin, you've got the Callaway Chrome Soft X, Titleist Pro V1X, and Wilson Staff Model listed. The Wilson Staff Model keeps popping up.
Yeah, and this is one where again, it's fighting a little bit of a mindset where slower swing speed players, for whatever reason, maybe it's marketing, maybe it's just personal opinion, have this idea like, I can't play a firmer ball, I can't compress the core, I can't do X, Y, and Z with it. And the fact of the matter is, if you need to add spin into your game,
guess what?
You're going to need to step up to a higher compression golf ball. And, we talk all the time about, for lower swing speed players, those X balls can be really good. And so, that's kind of what I went with in that direction. Now, I will kind of add one to the list that wasn't on the list originally. But if you're sort of like, I still want that soft feel and I want as much spin as I can get, just looking at what we saw in our data, the closest recommendation I can give you there is probably the Encore Elixir. But again, I would, if you're a slow swing speed player and you need more spin, look at those higher spinning X balls. Don't worry about compression. You're going to compress the core just fine.
Everybody compresses the core. We could do that as a T-shirt. Everybody compresses core.
Those may seem like unusual recommendations, but again,
it could be like you will find the core.
Yeah,
you will find it.
You're fast enough.
Just trust.
We all compress.
I love little bonus nuggets of information for our MPG listeners, so that's nice. Bonus. So say that one more time since it's not there. Encore Elixir.
Yeah, again, sort of a not super duper low compression by any stretch. Not like a Tour Response Bridgestone RXS Duo Professional, which I think were the 3 lowest compressions. But it is kind of in that, just a little bit below 80, so kind of softish feel and still spins a little bit. So that one was kind of an interesting option for that golfer as well.
Balance performance. We've got Bridgestone Tour BXS, TaylorMade TP5X, and Titleist Pro V1. Anything weird or wonky or surprising there, Tony?
Well, again, I think it's a mindset thing, right? Where like, hey, I want, I'm a slower swing speed guy, so I want soft feel, and I, don't compress the core, this or that, and so I need a soft golf ball, whatever. But again, trying to think in terms of true balance, which is, in my mind, like a reasonable speed property, so not super slow, a reasonable kind of in that mid-launch, mid-trajectory even, and mid-spin window. And I think, again, I've been saying for years, like for slow swing speed players who kind of just want a little more spin than they get from low compression offerings, I always loved the BXS. I mean, the Pro V1 is, definitely not better for everyone, but it's a really kind of versatile ball in that, again, because it is really sort of textbook middle of the bell curve. It works for a lot of golfers. And again, that TP5X is a case where I think golfers will be scared off by the X, but when I think balanced performance, like, kind of Goldilocks, right? It's not too much this, not too much that, not too little of this, just kind of just right. Like it's one that I think really kind of stands out in that kind of space.
It's almost like TaylorMade needs to come out with a higher compression, like TP5 double X or like X squared or something, then people wouldn't be as scared of the standalone X.
Triple X.
Well, and it's one of those things where, manufacturers say, I mean, right, Titleist is still fighting to when they kind of switch the properties of the X and the standard Pro V1, people go, what do you mean the Pro V1 X spins more? And like, when did that happen?
Right, that's a Pro V, yeah.
Yeah, well, it happened like 2 generations ago, but it's not exactly the same scenario, but TaylorMade did something similar when they took, on our measurements, 8 compression points. So they basically went from a comparison. They took the X, the TP5X, from a Pro V1 X compression
and
down
dropped
to
it a full category, basically,
to a Pro V1,
yeah.
And then kind of trickled the TP5, which was closer to the Pro V1 at the time, down from there. So, yeah, if you sort of only knew the TP5X from the prior generation and it was too firm for you, well,
this ain't your mama's TP5X.
Yeah, it's we're a little bit different now here in Generation 3.
Yeah.
All right, can we shut up the people that says, where's the dispersion pattern? This test is irrelevant. Can you give us the dispersion? Why is it not in this test?
Yeah.
You can never shut up those people.
I think it's a valid question. I think it's a valid question.
Yeah, no, super fair question. And we wanted to. We absolutely wanted to. But, there is a challenge in testing 37 golf balls and getting a really solid sample size of shots. You're going through, to get through sort of one rotation, and, our rotation was 2 to 4 golf balls. So, we'll hit 4 of these, move on to the next one, hit 4 of them, move on to the next one, move on to the next one. And so to get through that, we're talking a 2+ hour, about, hour and a half, I would say, to get through one rotation. And then you do it again and do it again and do it again. And you keep going until you're done. And what we noticed is that when we kind of looked at everybody's dispersion patterns, you're like, these are massive. What the hell's going on? This doesn't gel with what we saw. And what you see when you're watching is kind of a slow transition. And so what I went back and chunked everything out into 15-minute windows and said, all right, what did the shots do in this 15-minute window? And you could see, where the patterns were effectively shifting with the wind. And, I looked at our previous data from 2019, and we just didn't have the wind last time that we had this time. And so a sample size of, 3, 2, 3, 4 shots isn't really enough to sort of say, hey, all right, here's the dispersion. And so, I didn't want to look at it in groups of 4, and there was just, with the wind, too much left, right. And so observationally, I can tell you, hey, yeah, this ball looks like it moved against the wind one time, but it would have just been sort of unfair.
It could have been misleading.
Yeah. I didn't want to jump to conclusions that I couldn't wholly support with the data. And so again, just looking at the wind and comparing it to what we had last time, I said, you know what, it would be nice if we could do this, but we have our left-right distribution here, which is a key component of a dispersion metric, is unreliable, unfortunately. And so, we had to be cognizant of that.
Environmental factors could have skewed the data, and we didn't want to give you incorrect information.
Yeah.
In a nutshell, correct?
Yeah, and it's a lot, exactly. It's a lot harder to sort of account for, when you talk dispersion, you're essentially talking about, hey, let's draw a circle around the shots and let's tell you how big the area of that ellipse is. That's a lot harder to account for than, front to back wind. We were able to mitigate very well, I think. Very comfortable with those numbers. I'm not concerned of skew there, but again, the left to right stuff and trying to draw a circle around it. I just wasn't comfortable with that. So observationally, I can tell you there were some things I didn't like, but to back that up statistically and feel confident in it, again, I don't want to present anything to our readers that I'm not, that I don't feel fully or at least as adequately and accurately represents what happened as I possibly can. And dispersion is one of those cases.
Well, let's satisfy our listeners a little bit. What's one observation you're willing to share, whether it be statistically backed up or not? Something. You saw.
I was gonna get there. Where's the holy shit moments that we saw? And for me, there was two. Right. So there was two. There was the Titleist tour speed being ridiculously good. Just consistently over and over again,
just
down
long,
the middle,
long, I would say, long.
Consistent. Like that was a huge surprise because that was their, not as premium ball as they would say. It has the process that they do. This is was their injected urethane instead of their cash urethane, right, Tony?
Correct.
And that was the funniest thing because it was kind of to me it was, hey, up yours, everyone else. That's what you call premium. But for us, it's just, it's not quite good enough. So that was kind of funny. Whether that was our intent, that's where I got from. The other moment was, hey, Chromesoft seems to be doing a lot better. And I wasn't there for the first one, but it seems to be doing a lot better than the first time around.
Yeah, that's the other thing. So first, I'll speak to. I think you're right. Torsoft or Tour Speed rather, kind of overlooked in the Titleist lineup, and I would say, looking at some of our consistency metrics, which again we didn't touch on. I would tell you, looking at Ball Lab in general, that ball is not as consistent as other Titleist offerings, if I'm being brutally honest. And I think that came through. Well, there were certainly some highlights. Yeah, it was really kind of surprisingly long because of the low spin. Looking at the standard deviations, maybe not the first Titleist ball I would recommend in any scenario, but a strong performer for a guy who wants that low compression. Speaking to your point on Chromesoft, that's one where, look, Chromesoft launched us down the path of Ball Lab and everything we did because it was such a disappointment, sort of moving against, and again, right, everybody has their marketing, but sort of, positioned as the greatest thing ever. And we looked at it and it was just objectively bad. And so that kind of set us on the path. And, we've heard about these factory improvements and quality improvements and things like that. So, did we see that in the test? Did it come through? Yes. This newer Chromesoft, significantly better. Like to the point where I think I actually recommended it in a couple places. Mm-hmm. It was on the list. Certainly.
Did.
Yeah. Low for kind of that guy who really wants a low compression, softer feeling option. Chromesoft is in that conversation for sure. There's no way last time around I would have recommended that ball to anybody. My recommendations say, hey, if you've got a match with your buddy and trying to beat him, give him a sleeve. And that's so we're kind of in an entirely different place here this time. X, I think, was a little squirrely, but again, I can't say confidently. It's just one of those things where I look at it and go, maybe not. And as long as we're talking about the Callaway golf balls, the LS, Chromesoft XLS was surprising for me because it, by no reasonable measure, is really a low spin golf ball. I would put it kind of low to mid spin, but if we're looking again left dash and balls like that, which Pro Plus probably is another good example device where you do see spin numbers that are appreciably lower than others in that similar category. LS is lower spin than a Chromesoft X, but it's not low spin. And I think, again, we talk about everything being relative within the golf ball space. So I think Callaway has accurately characterized that golf ball. I'm not saying, hey, they lied about this. It's not that. It is an accurate characterization. It is a lower spinning version of a Chromesoft X. That is absolutely correct. But if you're thinking in terms of, hey, I want a high compression, super low spin ball, super low spin probably doesn't exist in that space anyway. But kind of if you're looking at the low end of the spectrum for that classification, XLS really isn't that.
Okay. In lieu of mailbag today,
Mailbag!
No mailbag.
No.
there we go. I thought we'd break down one of the most important reader questions that you detailed in the article, and it's a great way to wrap up the ball test for this discussion. And that question is, how do I find the right golf ball for my game? How do you, if you don't fit neatly into any of these recommendations that you've made, Tony, how does a golfer start to find the right golf ball?
So the first point is, right, finding the right golf ball is trial and error. There's just no way around that. And before we get into the meat and potatoes of it too, I'll also touch on what Chris said, right? You're almost invariably going to have to make a trade-off somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so like the conventional wisdom is start around the green. And, I hate the generality of that because it's, if I say, hey, greenside spin, that's for somebody that means inside 100, somebody else will say inside 50, somebody else may say 15 yards. So I would say kind of start with a wedge, and I would say close to the green, right? Harry's big thing, can I get it to check up? Well, start there. Does that ball behave off a really short wedge shot the way you want it to? Progressively move out, knowing that a full wedge and a full iron, you're going to see similar results. And I would say lean most heavily on the irons because you're going to hit a lot of irons over the course of a round. And so that's probably where you should focus. And then finally, great piece of advice I think that was given to me is fit the golf ball to the irons and then fit the driver to the ball. Because we have all this adjustability in our drivers now. We can add loft, we can take off loft, we can put a shaft in that's going to spin a little more or a little less. We can do all these things with a driver that we can't do with our irons. And so once you've got a golf ball that performs well off your irons, off your wedges, you like the feel off the putter, if that's kind of your thing, whatever it happens to be, then use the adjustability of your driver to dial it in and optimize what you're getting from that golf ball. And the thing I say too is, and it's tempting to go, all right, hey, I know the best golf ball for me is going to be one of these 5. Well, when you take it out on the course, maybe 2 at a time, because it gets to be a lot trying to sort that out. So I would create a tournament bracket, if you will, right? Play 9 holes with one, 9 holes with the other, and then try it with 2 other balls and maybe do it that way. But short version, it's a process. There's no kind of quick fix because, again, while our data can give you a really good idea of the general performance differences between the golf balls, I can't absolutely say which one of those is going to work best for your swing speed, your delivery characteristics, all the things you do on a golf course that I may not do, that Harry doesn't do, that Chris doesn't do. So it really is a scenario where to find the best for yourself, you need to take them out and play some with them.
Harry, Chris, anything you'd add before we go?
The only thing I would add is that, and this is a hard part to do, and Tony's right, it's trial and error. There's going to be down the road, ball fitting tools. We already see these out there. And again, a great piece of that is to help you narrow it down and really to eliminate bad answers, and say, okay, if I'm left with 3 or 4 good answers, then, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out and first thing I'm going to think about is, okay, what are the shots that are most important to me? The shots that I find myself trying to play more often, or a certain way that I like to play a particular shot, right? And then maybe it's getting a couple sleeves of each ball. And if you do get an opportunity, I know courses are crazy packed now, it's hard to get tee times and all that stuff, but if you do have an opportunity and you can go out and drop 3-4 balls around the green, hit those couple shots, kind of take it through your own checklist, like your own criteria, right? And say, okay, I'm going to label these 2 balls with a blue dot, these 2 with a red dot, and I'm going to hit 4 drives on this hole. And I'm going to go see, okay, did I hit that one good? Did I not? And kind of get some ideas. Where did they end up? What did that look like? And do some of your own on-course testing and really think about which shots are going to be most important, to you, your game, your overall performance. You might say, you know what? I don't care what else this ball does. If it's really clicky off the putter, I hate that. Well, okay. Maybe that's a decision point for you. That isn't a decision point.
Buy a softer putter.
Get an elastomer insert. So be selfish about it. Be understanding that what you really need it to do is going to be different than somebody else, and be okay with that.
For me, I would say a lot of the times that you're going to be scoring, it's going to be in and around that green. So you have to, for me, it's find a ball that you can make some magic out of in and around that green.
Magic
See
balls.
what I'm saying?
I like that.
So basically, that's where I do all my work, is around that green, because if I'm not going to be hitting 18 greens in regulation and then that way it doesn't matter. No, I'm going to be missing greens. I need to be getting up and down to save my par. That's where, for me, the money is made, because I'm not going to be hitting every single green. I'm going to be hitting maybe 10 on a bad day and 16, 15 on a good day. You're going to be missing greens, so you need to be get up and down the rest of the time to really contend. And for me, trying to make that cut 5 flipping under on the form tour. So
Maybe
I need to be having that magic.
Maybe this will help you, Harry.
I doubt it.
Okay. Check it.
Don't mislead people.
Is that the one you built, Chris?
Yeah,
That's not a new Ventus orange.
This is the Ventus orange and blue limited edition 1 of 1 CN Proto. We did some colors for one of my favorite teams, my favorite team. It's actually a Ventus black 6X, but that's what it is.
It's orange.
Yeah, and so bringing this all back to the golf ball, I would say my last note here, for the most part, you're not going to have a transformational experience, choosing a new golf ball, because the middle of the bell curve is that for a reason. That's where most golfers are. But if you're like me and you exist at kind of like one of these extreme ends, whether it's like you're a really high spin guy or a really low spin guy, and you figure out, holy shit, I've been playing something all wrong for me, and you make a switch from a ball that is nothing like what you should be playing to something that is way, way better, you're going to see that immediately. It's going to be noticeable. It's going to be a holy shit kind of moment. And again, I think that's going to be rare for the guys in the middle. Hopefully, looking at our data and kind of apply it to your game and what you need, maybe we can bring you a little bit closer to that kind of moment, because it's pretty awesome.
All right. Well, Tony, congratulations on a job well done. Team, congratulations on a job well done. I hope everybody's had a few beers after all of that hard work, because it was a lot. Listeners, if you have questions, drop them in the comments. I'll make sure that the guys are great about returning an answer for you. Yep.
Go out on a ballsy limb with your questions.
Let us know, and we'll make sure we're in the comments this week answering any questions that you might have. In the meantime, take another look at the article. We'll link it for you. It's a lot to dig through, so good luck, and we out.
All decisions in life are math-based. I mean, literally every single one of them. You are weighing some sort of odds in your head, whether you realize it or not. Even something as pedantic as crossing the street, depending on how much of a hurry you're in. If it's not 100%, hopefully you're going to wait a little bit. But if I got to get going, or there's a tiger chasing me, maybe you'll drop that down to 90%.